Your bread, it's got quite a bit of grit in it. And as you chew it, you're literally sanding down your teeth. Almost all the mummies I examine, even young ones, have teeth that are worn down.
Hello again. We're back with our discussion on ancient Egypt. Previously, we touched on tooth decay. The pharaoh needed to see a doctor. Unfortunately, it was a couple of thousand years too late. But they ended up saving the corpse. Couldn't save his life, but they were able to save the corpse. And when they examined him, it was discovered that he was suffering from tooth decay. Not because they had a lot of sugars, they just didn't have the medical they didn't have the type of medicine that we have now. They were good for its time, but compared to what we have now, no. They didn't go deep with it. It was just getting started. So, let's try to pick up, where we left off and see what happens.
It's a great mummy. The first really neat thing is the heart's on the wrong place, right? I don't mean that figuratively, that Ramses had his heart in the wrong place, he was a bad guy. It's in the wrong place. It's on the wrong side of the body. Let me explain. At mummification, the heart was left in the body. Because, as you know, the Egyptians believed you thought with your heart, so when you resurrected, you'd need it to think, say the magical spells, etc. So the heart was left in the body. Now, when Ramses was x-rayed, it looks as if Ramses' heart, there's no question about it, the heart is on the wrong side of the body, but it looks as if the heart is sewn into place with perhaps gold thread. Right? Now, the only thing I can think of that could have caused that is maybe when the embalmers, working on the mummy of the king, remove the internal organs, take out the stomach, liver, intestines, kidneys, go in through the diaphragm into the thoracic, right? You have two cavities, abdominal below the thoracic. Go into the thoracic, they're taking out the lungs, and perhaps they damage the heart. Perhaps they cut it. And perhaps, just perhaps, the heart falls out by mistake. Well, then they've got to put it back in. And this would have been a really difficult thing, suturing up Ramses internally with gold thread. Now, you'd use gold thread because gold never tarnishes. That's the metal of eternity. Even the tomb of a pharaoh was called the gold room. So you would use gold thread because it would last forever. So it seems as if the mummy of Ramses may have had some really interesting repairs on it, in ancient times even. Another interesting feature of my man Ramses is that he was a redhead. We can tell that from analysis of his hair. It's not that, as you get older, of course, your hair changes color. But Ramses really had natural red hair. Now, this may have a religion.
Now, see, I didn't know your hair changed colors. I kind of suspected, but I wasn't for certain because some people, their hair might be black, say, is common color, especially African Americans, Negroes, American Negroes. Your hair could look black, but if the sunlight hits it just right, it has a red tint to it, or it might have a brownish tint to it. I know a couple of people like that. So yeah, I could believe that this black man had red hair. Huh. Interesting. Do you all know anybody that has red hair or brown hair when everybody else in their family doesn't have that. Oh, Pawpaw was cheating. Nah, he wasn't cheating. DNA is funny because you don't know how far back your DNA cells are going to reach. You know, you might have blue eyes or hazel eyes. Like, ain't nobody had hazel eyes since great grandma. You just don't know. So let's get back to the discussion.
Significance. Religious. Remember, Ramses' father was Seti the First, and Seti was an unusual name because it showed an allegiance with the god Set, not one of the dominant gods. Well, the followers of Set were always said to have red hair, right? And maybe Ramses' whole family was this redheads that somehow had this following for the god Set, and that's why they were sort of associated with Set. It's an interesting thing, but he was redheaded. But Ramses today lies in the Egyptian Museum, in the mummy room, and you can see him today. The pharaoh who went out to Kush and did battle, who marries, he's there. It's real history. But as I say, perhaps Ramses' reign is too long, because Egypt is going to slip during the 19th dynasty. And that's what I want to talk about now. The slipping, the slow decline. Now, remember, Ramses had all these sons. Probably 52 of them, I think, is the number that's about used now.
Damn.
Well, naturally, many of them are going to predecease him. They're going to die before Ramses. Ramses was proud of his kids. On the wall at Luxor Temple, for example, you can see a procession of his children. The sons are lined up, and they've got their names under them, you know. Right on the front, you can see Amenhotep, the firstborn. And you count a few more down, you'll see Chaim Wasset, that archaeologist kid who did the excavations. And then, if you count down 13, you'll see Merneptah, the 13th son, who becomes king of Egypt. And what that means is, of course, that the first 12 died before Ramses. Okay? So we get this 13th son, Merneptah, being king of Egypt. Now, don't think of him as a kid. He's probably 60 years old by the time he ascends to the throne. His name is nice. It means the beloved of Ptah. Mer is the word for love and beloved, Mer. And the N means of, and Ptah, the god Ptah. So he's the beloved of Ptah. It's a nice name. And he's the one who erects the famous victory stela. In the 5th year of his reign, he erects that round top stone, talking about his victories in the area of Canaan, and he's the one who says, Israel is destroyed, its seed is no longer. And
Okay. All right. So the 13th son is making moves. Everybody else done died out. All his siblings came before him. They didn't die. So he's the only one left to run the family business. And it's interesting that the professor mentions Israel. Israel was not always a country. Israel started out as a people. And the professor explains this. And the Bible even says so much that they were a people, the children of Israel. So, that is our time for today. But we will revisit this again tomorrow. Comments on what we heard today. Like and subscribe to the channel. I have much more to dive into. We're going to break this thing down and understand it better. With that, I will talk to you all later.